Hi, so we're back and we're gonna finally finish this material. So before we do that, what I tend to do is when I'm doing any work, I tend to post it to a forum or Facebook and get some critiques while I'm going through. I think that's really important, getting critiques while you're processing a project or anything like that. So in this case, in general, they liked where it was going. Uh, People that are critiquing it are also textual artists and or 3D modelers who work in the industry or have worked in the industry before. And basically, they were talking about just general critiques about the texture, which in many cases are very valid. And for example, they were explaining that some of these areas looked a little rough in the sense that it looked a little kind of bloppy, kind of like it was hand sculpted. Kind of when you get in that ZBrush sculpting and you start using kind of like the mallet tool or the clay tool and start subtracting without doing too much cleanup work, so it looks like it's kind of battered by that kind of effect. And in general, they're right to say that. And also, one of their critique they mention is about the edges. That some of the edges, it would be good to have more micro cracks into them. Now, I'm probably not going to go into that right now, but in the final template that I'll give everybody, I'll edit this texture a little bit more and get some of those critiques in. But yeah, I mean, what I wanted to say in general is that when it came to this texture in particular, I was actually trying more so in abstraction, almost like when you look at a Disney film, especially the older ones, how they represent wood. Sceneries like rocks, rock formations. It gives the essence and the shape and form of it, and it tries to kind of like push it further. And I think that's the clear distinction that I'm trying to do with this is try to find that kind of artistic balance. Is tricky, especially when some texture artists have been working on more realistic type textures. In this case, and in Naughty Dog's case, what we tend to do is have this more handcrafted look when it comes to all our textures. And I don't know if that's good or bad, or if it's or if it's affecting our games negatively in any way. I don't know. It seems like we've been doing, pretty good. And it's kind of a style that I actually learned while I entered Naughty Dog, because before I used to do textures that leaned closer to realism. And as I worked at Naughty Dog, I started realizing that sometimes getting the essence of the texture is better than being pixel accurate with reference. Still, you want to start with reference, and you definitely want to study materials, and you really want to get as close as possible, for sure. But I think as time went on, because I did a lot of that in the beginning, I did my kind of studies of those materials. Now I'm getting to this point where I can try to express the texture a little further than unnecessarily just doing a raw copy of reality. So I guess the best way I can justify this, if it really even needs to be justified, is that this is kind of the style I'm going for, and I am expecting it to have this handcrafted look. Something that I think is very important for the games that we tend to do at Naughty Dog. And I think even if I'm not working at Naughty Dog, I'll try to push that kind of feel in some way or form. Now, sure, I mean, I can look at this texture and say, well, there's definitely a lot of stuff going on that I don't particularly like. And for example, I was just looking at this crack that's continuous down here, and this Z crack. I would actually probably go and try to mask that off so it's only on one of the cobblestones, because it looks like it's going through, and it just looks weird. Actually, this V crack right here looks really weird. Like, these look pretty natural, and this one by itself, it looks pretty natural, but this one looks pretty weird. So I probably would blend that out and be more careful in certain things. So while doing that, I actually they gave me some reference on Facebook. It was one of my previous teachers from my college years, who I still have connected on Facebook. He gave me a reference that I was actually curious to emulate. So it was basically this very kind of like architectural cobblestone, and kind of modern looking. The ones that you probably would get mostly in like Home Depot or something like that. And he wanted to express the edges more so than the style. But I also took it as a challenge, because I was like, okay, well, I have this graph that I created, and it's pretty flexible because I have all these damage types, and I'm able to tweak and modify. So I actually made a variation. It's the same exact graph. Let me connect the color. So it's the same exact graph as the original tutorial. It just has a different pattern setting and different intensities for the cracks and wear damage. So in this case, I was able to get something that's, I guess, entirely different than that original texture, and with a very short time. I think this only took me realistically probably like around 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, just to kind of like tweak and get it to where I want it. So I mean, it's using the same color, and since all these passes are based from the topology, all the color maps were regenerated as I changed the properties within the main graphs. So I think in this case, let's say an art director was to come and be like, well, I don't like those kind of bricks or cobblestone. With Substance Designer, it makes your life super easy, because I can be like, well, okay, give me a picture of what you want, and then I'll emulate it super quick, because I already have a graph that does, a full range of damage types and a full, vocabulary of all this stylization that I put into my graphs. And it makes it really easy for me to iterate quickly without having to work super hard. I mean, in the beginning, then the graph probably realistically it took me like 2 to 3 hours. But once I have those 2 to 3 hours of a graph, then I can make a texture every 10, 15, 10, 20, 30 minutes with it, and that's a lot of variation and iteration time that I can get from this. And that's what's, I think, at the core why Substance Designer is such an amazing program. So now, with that said, let me get back to my original texture, the original cobble that we were working on. and I want to change the material type from tessellation parallax to physically metallic and roughness default. Now you see it look super shiny and super crazy looking, and that's probably due to quite a bit of few things, like I don't have anything really connected to this material. So what I want to do, all the maps are not connected, that's what I meant, is so it probably has metallic and really high glossy roughness. It's kind of like the defaults of it. So now what I'm going to do is, let's ignore this for a bit. I'm gonna do my setup. Actually, before I ignore this, I'm going to go to edit and make sure it's on the right format. And then I want to make sure that I reset all my lights. Actually, I want to pick the cube and view input. And then I'll connect this just so I can see it really quick. My color. Let me display my light. So you see the normal's inverted, the light's going this way. So I need to make sure that my material's set up properly. So DirectX falls because I'm on OpenGL. So now let me go ahead and set up my base material. And the quickest way that I do this is kind of like a small hack. Is I grab base material. This one has everything in here. And what I do is I select it, and then I right click, and I say create output nodes, and this will automatically create all output nodes from this node. Now let me repeat this again because it gave me a menu, output nodes. It says create nodes from hidden connections. So in this node there's some connections that are actually hidden. If I press no, I'll only get the ones that are visible. If I press yes, I'll get the ones that are hidden. Now in this case, I think that is all I actually need. I don't need metallic, so I can actually delete my metallic. I think I'm good with ambient, and I have my height, roughness, normal, and base color. So this is all I need as a connectors. So I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to bring these up here. And right from the get-go, I'm going to connect my base color to base color, my normal to my normal, and since I have no roughness, I will set a roughness using a uniform color. Make sure it's grayscale, and I'll set this to be pretty much white, so very rough for now. And then I don't have any ambient occlusion, so I'll do a quick AO pass, grabbing my ambient occlusion node. Remember I said this node is not as good when it creates an AO. I can probably modify it, and I'll show you how I can modify it in here. But for now, this will do more than what I need for having basic AO. And then my height. Okay. So with this, I'm gonna delete these outputs because these has become my new outputs for this shader. I'm going to go through here and make sure that I take the base color numbers out. And the reason I did that is because there's other outputs with the same name. So this, so when it does that, it actually just puts a number in there. And now I'm going to do view outputs in 3D view. And that's what I get. So this is the base structure of my material, and if I go to materials, I go edit, I can add relief, and that'll give me a fake parallax or displacement based on my height information. I'm going to go to take off the light. And now let's create our roughness material. Let's set these to the side. And actually I'm probably going to start setting up my roughness over here. I'm going to dock my AO to my AO over there. And this I'm going to put down here because that's going to be my connector to my roughness. Okay, so let me find so I think I want to have to create a node here, actually. So the way I like to create my roughnesses is having a variance, and I think I mentioned this before. And to do this, I need to use my level node. So what I am going to end up doing is create another node. That's specifically for roughness passes. So I'm going to make a new go to File, make New Graph, and this I'll call it Roughness. I'm going to set it to empty, relative to parent, 16 bits per channel, and I'm going to put OK. And I'm going to save this to Roughness. And then I'm going to set add node, grayscale image input, and on output, and they're all gonna be gray. And I'm gonna put a levels node, and I am going to expose parameters, and I'm going to call this low and high, and I'm going to we'll give it a roughness prefix. I want to put it and just put OK. Then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to label it, and I'm going to put min, because that's the lowest, and then max, and then I'll put it roughness, and now I'll go back to cobblestone. And bring my roughness node, bring this in, so one thing I'm going to do is go back to this node, roughness, set my defaults to 0.5, and both my defaults to 0.5. So at 0.5 and 0.5, this is the roughness that I'm going to get. It's basically just right in the middle, and a little bit glossy and a little bit rough. So now what I am going to do is start gathering my passes. So, okay. And to gather my passes, what I'm going to do is do a gradient map. Make sure it's set to grayscale. I'm going to bring this one into here. This one into here. See, I'm just bringing all my noises. All my passes that I created, that I used to create all my materials. Bring my AO over here. I'm going to composite an AO using these two materials, using these two textures. What I'm trying to do is, by using these passes, create a better AO. If I didn't really explain what I was doing here. So I'm trying to get some of these smaller details, tighter information in there. into my material here. Increase the spread. Okay, so this is my new AO, and that's another pass. So here's my theory when it comes I don't know if I can say theory. This is how I work my roughness passes. Start thinking about what the texture is doing and where stuff is accumulating. So I guess to talk about roughness, going one way is super glossy, going the other way is super rough. Now, the conjunction of those materials is like glass to water on one side to the other side being powder. But I mean like really fine powder. And probably powder you can really find in real life. So you go into 1 and go into 0 is probably impossible when it comes to roughness, unless the material is pure. It would have to be like on the atomic value 100% pure. So that's why we have something called a variation, or having a range when it comes to the roughness. All materials on Earth basically have a range. If you were to, I have a wooden desk, and just looking at it, I can see a lot of variation. It's mostly glossy. You can see a little bit of reflection, but there is definitely some variation going on, and some of it has to do with the material, the material itself being what wood is. But some of it also has to do with stains from my hands, from moving the mouse on a section, from grease, from dirt, dust. All these materials are on my desk, and all of them have a range of value. So I tend to start with either my most rough area. So using an AO, I start to imagine, well, where does the most of the kind of dirt accumulate? And it usually kind of accumulates in the cracks. So with using an AO, I can selectively select the areas where the cracks are, and where stuff is kind of just inching in. So all these cracks that are a little darker are going to be my the rougher areas. So in this case, I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit more by adding levels and making sure AO gets even darker in some areas, because I really want those areas to be a lot rougher, especially in these cracks here. Now I'm only really worrying about the stone. So if you're thinking, well, wow, the dirt could be wet, why is it going to be that rough? Well, it could be that rough, but I'm actually going to end up masking this out and adding a different roughness value inside here. So I'm really just worrying about the stone and getting variation on the stone. So now I want to use another level node and use my cavity smooth. Again, I want to invert it. I want to clamp it as much as possible. But I want to start getting my gray tones in here. I deleted my invert node because with the levels I was doing the same thing anyway when I inverted it. So now I want to combine these two. I'm going to do screen. So I'm blending this one together, and this one is the cavities. So again, to reinforce the cavities a little bit more, I want to invert this mask into here and set it to overlay. Actually, probably screen. Okay, so something like that. When I combine these two together, I want to flip these and see if I can get a better effect. I want to make sure that this is auto leveled. Then I'm going to blend these two. Together. blend this. I might get my bubble gum. Bubblegum mask, and I'm going to blend that in. And I'm going to set that to set this one to subtract. So I want my bubble gums to be one of the darkest points in there. And now I want to make sure that this is leveled off, auto level, move my range a little bit in the middle, like so. Okay, so basically the reason I was tweaking these the AO again is just because I wanted to have a more clear value right on the histogram. Something that looks more like a mountain curve. It was going a little high here, so I made sure just to reduce that a little bit. And if we want to be even more accurate, I can actually go and connect it to a gradient node. Start shifting Actually, that didn't work so well. I can just go clear all. Yeah, let's just leave it like this. And now I plugged it into my roughness. And I'm actually going to just plug this one directly to my roughness here. And since they're both 0.5, right now I'm getting a little bit glossy and a little bit rough. So I want my maximum to be extremely rough. And my minimum to be a little bit on the glossy side. Let me go to edit, and let me tile it several times. And I'm actually going to change my environment. Get one where's the jungle? I'm looking for the jungle one. This one's pretty good as well. I'm going to turn off the light. There we go. So I'm going to put it 0.8, and I want to put this to 0.3. Oh, 0.43. Before I'm gonna do sharpen in between here. add the light. I'm going to point the light in the general direction of where the actual light's coming from. Which is, I don't know. Let's say right there. You're starting to see that breakup right there. So it looks like 0.35 and 0.9 is a good value for the stones and the dirt that's happening there. Now I'm gonna tweak the values for just the dirt. I'm gonna try and make that feel like it's more or less wet. Connect these to here, and I'm going to grab my mask for my grout or my dirt mask, which is this one. And now I'm going to tweak the values for my for my dirt. So I'm making it look a little bit like it's muddy. So for this, I'm just gonna use this mask. Actually, I'm gonna use just this. And that. And I'll use this one for screen. And I'm going to level this to make sure it's fully clamped. So my auto level. I'm going to plug this to the dirt. Roughness. And I'm trying to really get kind of that slight wet feel inside the roughness. Okay. Now I'm going to do another blend. Set this to this one, that one to that one. again, I'm just gonna use this mask, this gradient mask into here. Set this to my roughness. And I might grab my stones. Just this one. Set these to be the same value or close to my stone granite. So now those are not getting as shiny. Still a little bit shiny, but not as shiny as the dirt. The last one is going to be a combination of this one and this one. Set these to screen, so I have both, and then when I combined my grout and do a subtract, actually multiply. And when I do another blend, just in case, use these and do multiply, or you do a subtract. Bring this to the mask. And then connect. Now the only thing that's kind of shiny or kind of in the wet field is actually the dirt, and the leaves are an in-between. I'm going to make them an in-between value. Or I can make them extremely shiny. I'm adding the bubble gum back in because I really want those to be super shiny. I'm just doing a last second tweak on those. And there's a roughness texture. So we have an AO, we have a height, and just to make sure, I'm going to make sure the height is auto leveled. Gonna make sure the AO is also auto leveled, so it has its full range. The normal should already be normalized. The color is in. So that puts this tutorial to a close. That was pretty much all full information how to create a texture from start to finish, with some added tools that we had to make to make the texture. It's all there. Basically, in many ways, is basically what I do all day at Naughty Dog nowadays. I just make textures in Substance Designer or ZBrush or Photoshop and put them in game. Usually I have around the time to make one texture a day. Maybe sometimes a texture can take 2 days. But either way, that's pretty much what I do as a texture artist at Naughty Dog. And here's my website, rogelioholguin.wordpress.com. You can check out all my works I've done. I was able to work on Last of Us. I got in Naughty Dog kind of like at the very end of Last of Us, and I was able to work on various levels there. It was a really fun project. And now I'm working with the Naughty Dog crew, making the awesome next Nathan Drake adventure with Uncharted 4. I've been honored to be able to work on some great projects in there, some great levels, and I hope once it's released that everybody will love it. It's definitely a lot of work, and people are at work just doing the best they can to make an amazing experience. As well as I just want to mention, feel free to email me. I'm pretty bad at answering emails, so do expect that. I'll try to do my best and answer them as quickly as possible. You can also message me through Facebook. My name is Rogelio Holguin on Facebook. I also happen to be on Polycount. You can message me through there as well. I'm free to, in any way or form, you can message me, even LinkedIn. So feel free, and we can start talking about cool texture stuff and whatever you want to talk about within reason and time, of course. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and you've learned a few new things. I've definitely learned a few new things just doing this tutorial, so it's been fun. See you until the next one.